So I would say, at a high level, we're building the liquidity infrastructure. And what I mean, by that is we're building a suite of tools and products that are meant to simplify interacting with proof of liquidity, with the goal of maximizing returns to liquidity providers and users, and then also helping protocols bootstrap liquidity at the cheapest cost of capital.
BM. Today we're gonna talk about liquid staking and the very important role that plays in the Berachain's proof of liquidity. And also we're gonna explore Raito's origin story and how he came up to build Infrared. This is BlockHunters Voices, the podcast with cool kids from the blockchain space. I'm Joachim Buju, your host, joined by our regularly Berachain co-host, Kas. Welcome Raito, welcome Kas.
BM, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Raito. Before we dive into tech, can you tell us about your history with crypto? When did you first catch your attention and what were you working before joining the space?
Yeah, for sure. I would like to say I had like an aha moment, but it was really much simpler than that. It was around 2021 where I was having some drinks with a person who is now one of my closest friends, and it was over the course of that night where I got chilled pretty heavily into crypto and specifically DeFi. This was during the beginning of NFT seasons with a lot of food coins and whatnot. I got extremely curious, as I've always kind of been on the sideline, kind of seeing bits and pieces of it. But it was the exact next day that I just went down the rabbit hole and started diving deep. And bear in mind that this was the start of NFT season, and it had a bunch of bull market vibes. Funny story is that I quickly found an NFT which I thought for sure was going to be Banksy on chain, and I was like, it's one of those moments where it's you're gonna make it. You found that that one thing, as I'm sure many people.
The hidden gem.
Huh?
The hidden gem.
Yeah, the hidden gem. And of course, it's it turned out to be some scam, right? But it was a cool kind of first experience, and I think you got to have some of those battle scars. But in parallel, I think what's even more pivotal in kind of my journey was I fell down the trenches in the Curve and comics ecosystem, and more specifically also the Ohm community. And it was really through that community that I fell in love with the people, the culture, the innovation, and that exact same community is where I met a lot of my closest friends today, a lot of people that I know within the Berachain ecosystem, and I actually became one of the founding team member of one of the leading Curve and comics governance aggregators and creator of a pretty significant bribe marketplace that spun out of the Olympus community. I won't name the name of the protocol, but it's something that I think many people that have been in the trenches would be familiar with, and a project that is quite close-knit to the Berachain community.
Yeah, that's very great that I see people that experience Ohm from the beginning and build to the culture and the project itself bring a lot of value, not only for DeFi but for the space in general. I think of them like big brains, right? Because Ohm was pretty innovative and was very, very cool last cycle. I hope to see something similar or something that has at least the same reach.
I think it's gonna be Olympus on steroids.
Yeah, and hopefully on Bera.
Yeah, definitely. And then, by the way, Viju, I read a couple of your tweets, man. Very inspirational. First of all, I love how you kind of opened up and talked about how you overcame a bit of shyness in order to start the pod. And then also, I particularly liked that tweet about kind of diving in the trenches. I know you made a lot of reference to the Ohm community as well. Gave people bits of the Berachain lore about how it spun out of the Ohm community, and just recommending people to be in the trenches, meet people, do your thing. So yeah, that's awesome, man.
Thank you for this. Actually, I wasn't personally in Ohm, but interviewing people and talking about this, like Gianni and a lot of folks, I really understood how it was there, and I really appreciate things doing that well. You can see that the community that was built in Ohm is if Om wasn't there wasn't no Berachain. So Berachain changed my life, so hence Olympus changed my life too, right? So you have to know your history.
Yeah, that definitely got to call out and kind of give shout outs when it's well deserved.
Thank you for
Crypto
that.
made him do it.
Yeah, exactly. I was very, very shy. I'm still am, but I try to conquer this and do it for the community and everything, right?
Yeah, you definitely can't tell. You're very, very well composed, and this previous pods have been really great. So it's amazing to see again.
Thanks.
Yeah, our next question was, how did you get involved in Bera? I know you kind of responded to that, but is there anything you would want to add? What led to the discover? Obviously, was probably Om, but what convinced you this is the place you want to build? Maybe.
Yeah, so I'll probably take it in two parts, right? So to give you guys even a little bit more of my background story and a little bit of a dox, I guess, like not a full dox, but a little bit. If I go too deep, cut this out, guys.
But sure, just let us know and we do everything.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, it's really like through the Ohm community where I first kind of found crypto, and then also a little bit of a reference to becoming a founding team member of that specific Curve Convex governance aggregator protocol. A lot of the team was actually based in Toronto, and it was during a time where I went out to Toronto to visit the boys, where I met the Berachain team in person. So it was like Smokey, Papa, Dev, Home, all the boys. I'm not gonna lie to everyone, to you guys, to the audience, but I thought Berachain was a joke at first. It was a JPEG of bear smoking out of a bog, and then given my experience founding like Banksy on chain, I was like, all right, cool. This is cool, like dope art, but I don't know what this is. But luckily, I got a chance to meet the guys in person. Quickly found out that this was one of the highest caliber teams in the space. And at that time too, I was also starting to step back from my previous role. I was exploring opportunities, found my own project, and every single time I came back to Berachain, it was part of it was being able to meet the team in person, and then even more importantly was fully aligning with like the thesis that Berachain had of taking the position of solving for like building deep pockets of liquidity in an ecosystem in order to build a thriving ecosystem. That really resonated with me, especially having like some founder experience with the previous protocol. The second part of the question, or like second part of the answer, actually is kind of diving into like what I mean by that. And I guess I'll turn it to you guys before kind of diving into it. Is like, what do you guys think are like the core pillars of the ecosystem in terms of like stakeholder?
So I think number one is our memes and vibes, right?
Proof of liquidity,
followed by like a huge understanding of the DeFi and the crypto space overall. Like you need to be native to crypto to understand Berachain. That's my view, and that's the number one thing.
Definitely, yep, definitely. I guess like on my side, right? And I guess this is a little bit different. This is more of like diving into deeper blockchain, like the deeper kind of like ecosystem stakeholder side, which not to kind of like take away from like the memes and like the core building blocks of what you guys mentioned, but like how I typically saw it, and this is how I saw it in the past, and that's why like the POL line so like closely with me, was that there's generally within the ecosystem there's the infrastructure providers, which are like the validators who secure the network, and then the builders who create like the building blocks and like the core applications, and then third is like the users and liquidity providers that kind of like drive like the lifeblood and liquidity back into the ecosystem. And the problem is always like, how do you attract these guys? Like, how do you maintain and kind of create an environment where you have validators or like the infrastructure providers who secure the network, and then through that attract builders who will then attract like the users and liquidity providers that end up driving like the value back to like the chain. And Proof of Liquidity really kind of like took the position of, you create deep pockets of liquidity so that you attract builders, and then the builders attract the users and liquidity providers, and that usually aligns, and through like the POL kind of design is you're able to align incentives between all key stakeholders and create like a sustainable environment where it's a productive type of environment for all stakeholders. So that's kind of like in the beginning when I met the guys, thought like kind of went down that rabbit hole. It like clicked immediately, and I was like, this is the ecosystem where I want to build it. And
Yeah,
of course, yeah, and of course on the other side it's like, like the culture, the lore, and as Smokey likes to put it, like the bits of mental illness.
you can imagine from our point of view that Berachain actually is the first ecosystem that puts validators first, and actually is good not only for validators but for delegators as well, because when you stake that BGT, actually you don't get only BGT, you can get a diversified portfolio, but it's the validator's decision what diversified portfolio you get, because he gets the bribes from the protocols, right? And he chooses with what protocols he wants to work with. So it's an important decision for both the validator and for both the delegator.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something so unique to Berachain as well, right? So talking like validators having the ability to direct emissions, and then what you're talking about is for validators to kind of have the decision making power of accepting the incentives that they get in return for directing those emissions.
For those who may not be familiar with the Berachain ecosystem, even though we've talked a bunch until now, can you give us a high-level overview of what infrared is and what its role is within the chain?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say, at a high level, we're building the liquidity infrastructure. And what I mean, by that is we're building a suite of tools and products that are meant to simplify interacting with proof of liquidity, with the goal of maximizing returns to liquidity providers and users, and then also helping protocols bootstrap liquidity at the cheapest cost of capital. We start this by building out the liquid staking infrastructure, which consists of two products. The first being iBera, and iBera is something that's very similar to like the traditional liquid staking stacks that most people are familiar with, such as Raito on Ethereum or Jito on Solana. On the other hand, iBGT, which I would say is our flagship product, is something completely unique to Berachain. It's built on top of BGT, which is Berachain's governance token. And that token itself is naturally liquid, non-transferable, and very similar to a SO-bound token. By creating a liquid staking token on top of it, I would argue that this stack becomes more valuable than any other stack out there, because one, it introduces composability, and while maintaining the yield like bearing nature, right? So it becomes a very powerful tool that one increases a lot of increases utility and just quality of life for users, and then on the other hand promotes innovation. So as you can imagine, an entire DeFi ecosystem of new use cases can be built around it, and that's something we've seen throughout kind of testnet over the past couple months, which is really amazing and cool to see.
Can you break down how BGT works under the hood, and especially how do you maintain the one-on-one backing while keeping it fully composable?
Yeah, for sure. So iBGT works a little bit different compared to your typical liquid staking solution. And that's because it's built on top of a naturally liquid and SO-bound token. So the way you architect it has to be completely different compared to the traditional models of you stake in and you get a token in return, and then there's redemption functions. For iBGT, I guess the best way to explain it is by giving you a bit of kind of like a flow, right? So first we start off by aggregating all the BGT earning opportunities within Berachain on Infrared as an application. So when a liquidity provider comes into the ecosystem, they can come to Infrared as a first touch, see a holistic view of the entire eco, and then choose where they want to direct their liquidity as they see fit. We always stay neutral, so we won't try to push a person to go direct their liquidity towards a certain pool. It's all completely up to them. The whole point is we provide these sets of tools to be able to make life easier for everyone. And then within the like our app, right, we have a bunch of vaults which essentially acts as a gateway to all these like POL rewards. And when the user or liquidity provider provides that liquidity, BGT is emitted in return. And in this case, when BGT is emitted, it will go directly to our smart contract vaults. And as soon as it hits our smart contract vaults, we'll mint iBGT back to the user. So there's always going to be a one-to-one backing. So it's important to note that it's not a peg, it's going to be a backing. Because it's a liquid, it's impossible to have technically a peg.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that was it. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to go back a bit to the tokenomics and how the whole Berachain ecosystem works, right? Because I do think the experiment of the proof of liquidity is very bold, and if it's successful, we can call it like tokenomics v3 or something, and we can expect other ecosystems and layer ones in the future trying experimenting at the liquidity layer for the protocols, right? Because then everything that's been so far will get old in compared to the possibilities Berachain infra offers, right?
Yeah, sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, so I was asking if you think if the whole concept works on the mainnet, are we gonna see a lot of new layer ones using some kind of alteration at the liquidity layer, like having some kind of proof of liquidity but in other ways, because then all the layer ones that we had so far, Solana, Ethereum, and so on, will get outdated to what Berachain infra can offer to users, to validators, to applications.
Yep. So I do believe that with any very successful launch, innovation or anything, you will have people take inspiration from it. I think people will be able, like I'm sure we'll see other kind of layer ones that come up to try to implement similar type of functions and designs. However, I don't think I think we may in the future, assuming that Berachain accomplishes everything that it's setting out to do, we may see a new L1 that has similar features, but not exactly L1. Things rarely ever work out when you do like a complete fork, especially at the scale of like an L1. And then also at the same time, I would say like taking components of it may be something that we'll see more. That would be like a more likely scenario, because there are other ecosystems that want to optimize for different things, right? Everyone may take a different approach, whereas some is focusing on like high throughput, fast finality versus kind of like the liquidity side of things. So yeah, I think to answer your question, I do think there's a chance that people will adopt and try to take certain components of POL and try to kind of architect something that takes the best kind of like pieces of everything and run with something like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Right now, the validator set is centralized, meaning that you run your own validator, but in the future you're gonna have a decentralized set. Can you tell us more about this? When are you gonna plan on mainnet, on testnet?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I think first it's the reason behind a decentralized set is just a single point of failure, right? I think we're very lucky to be in the position where we are, and part of being in that position is we expect to accumulate a large amount of assets, Bera to be staked and BGT to be delegated. So with kind of that positioning, it's also our responsibility to make sure no one loses money, things do not like go wrong, and having like running our like one validator internally presents a pretty large risk. So it's just more of a function of de-risking. We took a lot of inspiration from like guys like Raito, where they also decentralized like their set. You work with other node operators that are seasoned, mature, have been in the space for quite a while, and also guys that have been around in the Berachain testnet, so that are quite familiar with like the architect running nodes on Berachain already. So being able to work with a set of partners that are really well experienced, and then also at the same time being able to kind of be in the trenches with us, kind of research different topics on how to not only improve our architecture, but also maybe provide additional value back to Berachain is what we're shooting for. In testnet today, of course, many can see we're running our own validator. We'll probably continue to run our own validator in testnet moving forward, but as we kind of like move on to mainnet, we'll be decentralizing our set and working with what will be a small curated group to begin with, and then eventually opening up that group.
And I would assume the criteria for selecting the validators is going to be the validators who execute the proof of liquidity now on testnet, because we can see in the 210 validators, only some of them actually have a diversified portfolio of bribes and giving this kind of assets to their delegators and being actively engaged rather than just spinning up a node and the node is there and we are doing nothing, right?
The old way.
Yeah. So yeah, we will take all kind of factors into account. So part of those factors is, I think first and foremost, right, is uptime, making sure that like the validator, like the node itself, its core and main function is done well. And then on the other aspect is, I think in terms of like the POL management and stuff like that, we will weigh that and take that into consideration. But within kind of like the testnet environment, it's not as high of a priority for now. It definitely is a plus and something we would like to see, just because it shows active participation, right? And it shows kind of alignment and conviction within the Berachain ecosystem. But yeah, to answer your question, we'll definitely take that into consideration.
Great, thank you for that.
Infrared was part of Build-A-Bera first cohort. Could you talk a bit how that experience was for you as a builder and how probably change your trajectory of the project?
For sure. So, it was a very, very valuable experience, I would say. Even as like one of the earliest builders in the ecosystem, Build-A-Bear really helped us kind of align with the foundation and also like other ecosystem communities. It served as like a bridge of sorts, and they also provided a lot of like valuable resources, such as like subject matter expertise support. So on the technical side and even on the business side, just when we had questions, we would be able to reach out and ask them and really just get some help on that. And outside of that, fundraising support, we were the first project to raise in the ecosystem from like VC back capital, and their support was instrumental, just through intros, kind of going through raise materials and just general positioning. I think for like some of the audience, or maybe like some of the other builders out there that may be considering looking at Build-A-Bear, I'd say one thing, and this is coming from a place where I'm quite familiar with accelerators and incubators, is that Build-A-Bear specifically are extremely communicative. Like, these guys are actually available, so it's not a situation where it's like you come in, you start off very strong, people are always there for you, and then as soon as you get in, people are gone. You're like, who do I talk to? It's not a situation like that. It's a situation where they're there for you. They want to see your success, and they're very well experienced and competent guys. And you also get a bit of exposure into like the whole network of other kind of cohorts of Build-A-Bear projects as well. I don't want to show too much. I'm just very thankful for for their help, and also at the same time really love their program. So I'll take a stop there.
Yeah, that was something that attracted me as well, because you see something like Berachain that looks so fucking retarded, but in behind everything is a professional, right? That's the funny thing.
Yeah, I think that itself like sums up the Berachain community very well, right? It's like everyone in the surface is like very unhinged. On one hand, you can like have like a guy talking about like the craziest shit that you'll ever hear about, where you're just like, you're like, this is like there's no way this guy's building some crazy stuff, and then at a flip of a switch, this guy can probably jump on stage at like one of the largest conferences in like the year and just talk about the most technical shit. So it's like, it's very cool. You get to work with very like very interesting people within the ecosystem that I don't like think you can find anywhere else. I mean, taking a look at testnet, right? Like, where have we ever seen a testnet that looks like a full-on mature mainnet? It's crazy. Like,
It's crazy. Yeah, I haven't seen anybody in the beta to be late to a meeting to say that I'm gonna do that in 1 week and then just ghost you, or the usual stuff that happens in crypto. Actually,
yeah, for real. Yeah, and I guess that's another part too. Is just like I love how collaborative everyone is. It really is amazing to see, and I think like a very funny example was we were at an event at a conference, like about 4 or 5 months back, and I remember seeing 3-4 projects that were in the same vertical that had many aspects of building out the same product, just huddling up and figuring out how they could work together. And I thought that was something so unique to Berachain and so cool to see. Like, because in other ecosystems, these guys would probably be going on each other's throat trying to figure out like how to beat out the other person. But then in Bera, you're like, let's work together. So it's great.
yeah, that's a kind of approach that we do with our validator colleagues as well. It's better to work together rather than be enemies, especially for the more smaller validator companies like us, rather than corporate companies like, I don't know, P2P or TwinStake or institutional companies.
Definitely. Yeah, I think there's more than enough opportunity for to go around for everyone. So it's great.
Looking a bit forward right now in Q5 or 6 to 12 months, what would success look like for infrared by then?
Yeah. So fast forwarding, kind of 6-12 months post launch. Let's
Post launch, yeah.
Post launch. So Q6, Q7, success for us, can kind of like be broken down in a couple points. We have a couple targets in mind, and sharing some of those. One would be being able to capture around like 50+% of all Proof-of-Liquidity TVL, which means capturing around 50+% of all BGT inflation. And we're able, like the way we go about accomplishing that goal is just simply education, and at the same time, like the way our product is positioned is we're not competitive for TVL. What that means is, like earlier when we were talking about the iBGT product and how it's structured is, liquidity flows through us as a pass-through, so we're non-competitive. So that gives us the ability to kind of work with any and all projects within the ecosystem and be completely complementary to that and to the chain itself. For the second part, it would be probably like being one of the biggest asset issuers on Berachain. So when you think about kind of minting iBGT, iBera, that all goes into it. Third is, as kind of being part of a liquid staking product, we, of course, we build black holes for all the core assets that you need in order to stake or delegate to a validator, in order to create the most optimal validator stack, and then in turn one of the largest stack. So being one of the largest validator stacks within the network. And then lastly, being able to be a market leader in the incentive stack. So being able to kind of help streamline the interactions between like the protocols and POL for them to be able to bootstrap liquidity at the cheapest cost of capital. So those are kind of some of the goals. And then most importantly, as we kind of like, as we kind of like reach those goals and just make progress in general, we want to make sure all value accrual is going back to our token holders. So the way our token is designed is that all value flows back. Exactly. So we want to be able to incentivize and reward all the guys that are early stakeholders, our early supporters, and everyone that kind of has played a role in getting us there. I don't want to get too ahead of myself because we still have a lot to execute on, but that's kind of the general framework and mindset.
Are we gonna see other tokens rather than the foundation ones? I mean, am I gonna see I eat?
No,
yes.
That's too much. Our core focus is Berachain, so we're we're gonna stay focused within the Berachain ecosystem. So that means making sure that we do everything right and have everything mature in the Berachain ecosystem first. When you mention stuff like iETH or something like that, right? We're not going to touch it. but that doesn't mean we can't work with other liquid staking providers. So like, you know, if Lido wants to come over and do something in Berachain, there's a lot of ways for us to collaborate on. And then most recently, you know, rather than like mainnet LST stack, there's been a lot of, you know, Bitcoin LST stacks that have been coming into the Berachain ecosystem and looking for ways to collaborate and source yield. I'm sure many people have seen some of the announcements, like Solve with Merlin, and some like Pump, and some of the other BTC LST issuers. But there's a lot of ways for us to work with them too, from being able to help optimize yield for their tokens, being able to help kind of generate additional yield back to their treasury if they're staking their like their protocol own liquidity, in the form of like the LP token through their pool 2 through infrared, and then in general, like when they do want to interact with like POL and play like the POL games, they can come to infrared in order to bootstrap liquidity back to them. It's like stuff like that.
Great, thank you.
What about having, so I think you know that Bitcoin, Obama Sonic 10 Inu, is making the first layer 2 on Berachain. What about iBitcoin? Or their layer 2?
Oh, iBitcoin. Yeah, I first of all, love those guys. They're really great. Had the pleasure of meeting them, you know, kind of a couple months back, and then got a chance to meet a couple of them in person. It's amazing to see that they're starting off from, you know, a great community, and then now launching a whole layer 2. For us, there's nothing on the roadmap to create, you know, like a iBitcoin type of token. I think a lot of the layer 2s, what may end up happening is they may end up using Bera as a gas token. And even if they do use their own like native token for gas token on the L2, there may be opportunities where we can take our LST stack like iBGT or even iBera and take a look at like some staking stuff. So working with guys maybe like Symbiotic or some of the other providers out there where we can stake into some bridge contracts, and then bring that back up to like the L2s to kind of like secure the network that way. So I think collaboration could look closer to something like that versus creating like an LST for like for gas token on an L2.
I see. Yeah, very interesting. So going back a bit into the collaboration side of things, you guys have tons of collaboration with most of the big DeFi project on Bera, like Kodiak, Baro, and so on, Gami, and so on. How do you think this partnership come about, and why are so many people eager to incorporate iBGT? What do you see iBGT into their frameworks being like the main use case for them using iBGT?
Yeah, for sure. So I think like first, I touched on it a little bit earlier, is that when like the way all our products are built and just like our protocol in general is like we're built to be complementary to the ecosystem. So like we don't compete for TVL, so it makes integration that much more simple. And a lot of the times like the tools and products that we build are meant to kind of serve as not only a pass-through, but something that helps like optimize yield and improve capital efficiency for a lot of our partners and also their community members. So it's more of like adding value back to you versus like how do we extract value, right? That's the first part. The second part is in terms of like iBGT specifically. We see iBGT becoming one of the most liquid and transacted assets within the ecosystem. That plus the ability to capitalize on the yield that is generated from the underlying BGT will create one of the hardest and most kind of productive assets in the ecosystem. This like partners being able to integrate iBGT will give them the ability to basically have a highly valuable asset that can drive additional value back to their own application, while giving it some additional utility and use cases back to their community, right? So I think at the very beginning, we kind of spoke about how, you know, entire DeFi ecosystem can be built around iBGT. This is kind of like driving back to that point of where, you know, like users can take iBGT and be able to interact with like all types of core primitives. You can think lend, borrow, leverage, and we even briefly touched on possibly like some staking stuff as well.
Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And then on another kind of aspect too, which I don't think we've talked much about in this call, but is working with the protocol directly from kind of like to help like lower their activation energy and kind of like bootstrapping liquidity at like a cheapest cost of capital. And the way we go about doing that is kind of like a second part of our product roadmap, which would be more of an incentive marketplace, where protocols will be able to come directly to us, incentivize our validator sets in order to direct BGT emissions back to their own pools. In many cases, we see this being like a protocols like Pool 2, right? And it is Pool 2 that they will most likely be bootstrapping with the liquidity with their treasury assets first. So in the case that there is a scenario like that happens, which we've seen many of our partners are doing, these partners would be able to get that Pool 2 whitelisted for BGT emissions. As soon as it got whitelisted for BGT emissions, it can be integrated onto Infrared. They can take the LP token that they own from what is the like protocol liquidity, right? Not to be confused with proof of liquidity. They can stake it with Infrared, earn iBGT and iRed. So iBGT would be an extremely productive asset to their treasury. First of all, they'll have access to liquidity, and at the same time, they can stake it and earn additional yield. So it's flexible to let them kind of cater to what they care about the most. Either they can go sell it for stables, or they can stake it to just stack up on the yield. On the other hand, they'll earn iRed, which is our governance token, and it gets interesting with iRed. Assuming they stake iRed, all the value accrual within our protocol flows back to iRed. So when you think about our partners incentivizing our validator sets in order to bootstrap to boost BGT emissions back to their pool, a portion of those incentives will flow back to them through their iRed holdings. So it creates this flywheel that basically creates a more capital efficient environment for them over time, as they kind of bootstrap liquidity back to their own pools and build deeper pockets of liquidity. So that's something that we've seen has been very powerful, and something that a lot of our partners have been actively kind of engaging in.
Well, is it live on testnet?
No, it is not live on testnet. It'll be something that'll be live on mainnet. Just the incentive markets isn't fully there. Yeah, but we could mimic it, and we've kind of did a bit of testing. But yeah, just a couple of things. Our own token isn't live, so the staking functionality isn't there, and then also the incentive market isn't live on testnet.
Yeah, another good example of DeFi on steroids here.
Yeah, I think iBGT for me, like a non-technical guy, makes some like the liquid staking for BGT makes so much sense compared to Ethereum or other things, right? Because you have BGT locked, you can't transfer it, not locked, sorry. And Infrared basically unlocks a lot of possibilities, like you said, bootstrapping new protocols and so on.
Yep, for sure.
We've had an interesting year, right? And I'm curious, Raito, what's your current outlook on the market? Because some say we're nearing the end of the cycle, others believe we're just getting started. What do you think?
I think things seem to be looking good, to be honest. There was an extremely bullish election, and it seems with the results of that election, there'll be hopefully a lot more tamed regulatory. It'll be like a lot more tame of a regulatory environment. So a lot of like maybe more regulatory easing. I think we're already kind of seeing some noise about like potential candidates, at least in the state side, that's coming in that will create a more friendly environment for many. You can see it across like some funds too, right? Like some funds are a little bit more open about kind of like what they're trading, how they're trading, and stuff like that. And then I think markets are also picking up with like some higher like ETF inflows and a lot more interest from retail. Speculation and sentiments are pretty much at an all-time high. I think like before we kind of started here, like we were talking about it, like Bitcoin hit 100K. Everyone's are like kind of in great spirits, and I think we go, we could go up from here post New Year's.
So
Oh,
we are
Which
looking at a bullish 2025 and even bullish Q5.
yeah, exactly. The last part that I was gonna mention was, I think we have a perfect market environment kind of being set up so far, and then we have Berachain launching in Q5, and then I know we're going to see the launch of a couple other ecosystems that other people within crypto are like quite hyped about. Like you got the Monads of the world, you got the Mega Use of the world. So hopefully, off the catalyst of like Berachain and some of these others, we'll see like a pretty frothy 2025.
Ooga
which
booga.
which crypto vertical excites you the most beside liquid staking or staking?
Yeah, trading. Man, I feel like this is a bit of a sellout answer, but Hyperliquid, very impressed with what Jeff did over at Hyperliquid. With initially, I think a lot of people just thought like Hyperliquid was another perp sure, a lot of people are kicking themselves right now.
Another DIDX, right? That's what they thought.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Jeff made an extremely bold bet, executed extremely well, and like the results are clearly shown. But I think trading is a extremely important vertical, and bringing it on chain is extremely valuable. Outside of verticals, to be honest, I think in terms of innovation and application, I would. I think PLL is still pretty slept on. I don't think many people in the space outside of like the deep bears in the trenches realize the impact that PLL will have on like DeFi and just in like ecosystems in general. I think like we've seen a lot of like L1s and L2s launch in past kind of like years, and none of them has really tried like some crazy new experiments. I think like PLL is extremely novel and first of the kind. And yeah, I don't think it's well understood, and I think it'll be something that could be similar to what we talked about earlier about like Hyperliquid, right? People just thinking it's like some other thing, but then when it actually launches and people see the impact in real time, a lot of people will be surprised. So
yeah, but it's basically our duty to educate people, because I've seen your docs and you have like explain me like I'm 5POL. We are doing this podcast and spaces, so it's the community that needs to push the proof of liquidity.
Yeah, you guys have tons of Medium blogs and a lot of materials around educating proof of liquidity, more than other protocols.
Yeah, definitely. So like for us, right, we always we are taking the position of education first. I think like for what we're building in terms of products, trying to simplify interaction with proof of liquidity, which is quite novel and can get quite complicated at times. We see it as like a major driver of our success is to help people kind of understand PLL, understand what we're building, and like why it's important. So thanks for kind of shouting that out, guys. Like great medium to have on here with you guys to kind of like talk about more of like the educational stuff, and then for us, we're always going to be continuing down like busting out some new articles and new kind of content about how proof of liquidity does XYZ, and then how infrared fits into that stuff. So
yeah, Berachain is definitely a pioneer in that regard, and I think the people that are not really into proof of liquidity right now, or maybe not appreciating as we are, is because they are waiting for the mainnet. They are maybe skeptical if everything will work as intended, but we are super convinced in the team in that sense.
Yep, for sure. I guess time will tell, and we gotta see. We won't know until mainnet, right? Or the other part is this has been a fake chain. I don't know what everyone's getting so excited about.
Exactly. But the vibes are there, man. You have to recognize.
Yo, we've been building off vibes for the past 3 years. That's all it really is.
But Berat testnet is better than 10 mainnets of other layer ones. So no joke.
Dude, the craziest thing is that I know people that use Bear testnet more than they use like an actual mainnet on other like chains.
Yeah, because
It's
it's so complex, you can do a lot of stuff there. Have a lot of protocols, a lot of flywheel in a
yeah.
steroids.
Yeah,
It's
a lot of
insane.
applications compared to other stuff. Like I feel this cycle we don't have that much fun stuff to do on chain, right? Like last cycle we had a lot of Ponzi's on forks, Tom forks, and all that crazy stuff. And now we have just the basic, like a DEX, NFT marketplace, uh, you know. And I think Berachain brings back that approach of crazy applications on chain.
Yeah, definitely. I think the innovation is going to be it's going to be fun. I think just like some like just looking at testnet right now, right? Like the applications that you've seen, you have some like you have guys that are building some like very big brain stuff, and then on the you also get like the other side of the spectrum of just like the most unhinged and like culturally aligned things like Eat, for example, right, is a really good example. You have like the Eat, like you have like the game where it's just you're just degenerate gamblers, but then on the other side you have like Eat bonds, which is going to be instrumental to a lot of protocols within the space, a very like highly utilized product. You have guys like Kodiak who are building a core primitive, which is going to be extremely like important to the entire ecosystem as a concentrated liquidity dex. But then they're also launching like trading like Telegram trading bots, like Pump.Fun, like meme coin type launchers, right? So just getting deep in like the culture while also building like very important infrastructure. And then while I'm on it, while we're shouting out some of our partners, the Bear Borrow guys too, are building some cool, pretty cool stuff. I love this. This is like free marketing for us.
For everybody.
For everybody.
Everybody benefits from the POL in the end, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
What's the most unexpected lesson that you've learned in your career? So we're talking 2021 to 2024 in this crypto career. So 3 years in crypto is like 15 years in a regular job.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Like cycles and just like timelines are so like it's fast forwarded in this space. I think in terms of lessons, right, is surround yourself with the right people. If you run into people that like are first and foremost like good people at heart, right? People that are out there to kind of like that doesn't even need to like generate value back to you, but are there as like a support system. Like keep those people close. Like I think having a good support system around you is extremely important. We, like you mentioned, crypto goes by really quick. You go through a lot of cycles, ups and lots of downs. So making sure to have like a good support system around you will kind of help a lot. Another thing that's maybe like a more direct type of lesson is always read contracts before you sign them. Don't just see something and you're like just put
You're the first one who told us something like this, actually.
Oh really? I think that's like something not many people think about, but like it's very important. Like you never know where like it doesn't matter. Like contracts are there for like kind of like for like events that are just like where shit just goes wrong or like something, right? Like in normal cases, like it doesn't really matter, but it's like in those moments that where like something happens and you need to like leverage a contract, you don't want to be caught off guard. So like just take some time to read it before you sign it. And then on that point too is like you can always negotiate, especially as like a founder. If someone comes to you with something like it's good practice to just negotiate and see if you can get a better deal, or if you can like be able to ask for some terms that are like a little bit more favorable to you. You don't have to accept things that are like a first offer. So I guess one
Keep
lesson.
grinding.
Yeah. So one lesson is more on like a personal type thing, and the other lessons was more on like kind of just experience as a founder and building a project.
I can tell you from the validator's point of view that you don't even see contracts that often.
Oh,
as a
interesting.
validator. Yeah. I mean, with Berachain, we had a contract, NDA, and everything, but with other chains, it's like, what contract or what? We don't sign anything. It's just a written word on Telegram or something like this.
Oh wow. Are they giving you assets too? They're just like trust me,
Yeah,
bro.
they are delegating foundation delegation, but it's just like a form where you put your contributions and stuff, and then you're gonna get a reward. Yes, because they delegate you a chunk of from the foundation delegation, but it's nothing like a contract where okay, I'm doing this, and then I'll get this, and that. You know, if this doesn't happen, so nobody respects deadlines, and uh, that's the odd thing in crypto. I mean, I came from media and cinema. I've saw a lot of contracts, producer stuff with human resource, technical, financials, and stuff. And here, you don't even have contracts. You know, you have with the big ones, right? But
Yeah.
smaller ones, it's
Yeah, definitely. I do think there's like a middle ground, right? Where it's just like you don't need, maybe you don't need a contract for every single thing, but then some like the bigger stuff, you should definitely have it in place as just like a way to protect yourself, probably like your counterparty, and then also just set expectations. But yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that a lot of validators didn't have a need for contracts.
we are entering the last chapter of the podcast, and we want to wrap things up with some rapid fire questions to get a sense where your head's at when it comes to crypto. So for this one, just quick top of mind answers. What's the most underrated and overrated idea in crypto right now?
Underrated. Touch grass. Overrated. Celebrity meme coins.
What are your top 3 most used crypto apps that are live on mainnet?
Yeah, I say bridges, trading bots, and yield optimizers. So like bridges like LiFi, trading bots like BonkBot, and then yield optimizers like Pendle.
Gotcha. What's a crypto-related topic that you completely changed your mind in the past years or so?
Crypto-related topic. That is a good question. Let's put that on hold and come back to it.
I'm gonna ask you something on this. What's your take on meme coins?
Love them and hate them.
Nothing in between.
Yeah, I think on one hand, it's amazing to see like huge communities being formed around it. In terms of like this cycle, it's definitely at the top of mind for everyone. The memetics has taken like attention across the board from not only like native like heads within the space, but also across like just general like in normies life, right? Just like TikTok, YouTube, and all normal like social media platforms is crazy to see. I think it's great when you see like when you see like memes done very well with a lot of like good communities being established, and then also like it's a breeding ground for a lot of speculation, right? Like the whole point of like memes is like a lot of people are trying to go in and get rich quick, but then what also comes with it, the part that I don't like is all the rug pulls, right? There's a lot of people out there that's looking to exploit people. A lot of times, like when I mentioned earlier about like
CC Hawk Tua, the most recent one.
exactly, right? Like, I personally like to think it's not intentional, right? I don't think any like celebrity or anything is going to endorse something with the intention of rugging people like straight up like that. But I do think what happens is maybe the team that approached them was like paint them this very beautiful picture, and then at the same time it's either incompetency or it's like intentional by that team that took advantage of not only the people that like played it by like trading the coin, but also like the person who's endorsing it. And then sometimes you get the bad actors that are just like they just straight up don't really care. They come in and like we're scanning these heads because there's no consequences. Yeah, so that's kind of my overall take. But I do think memetics is extremely important in this cycle. It's a huge driver to build like extremely cult-like and sticky communities, and that plays a lot into what like Berachain has done in terms of like forming our community here, and also why I'm so bullish on Bera and being able to capture a lot of market attention and that's just pending launch Q5, I guess.
What keeps you going through the tough times?
Mental illness.
What problem in crypto do you think most urgently needs solving right now?
Simplifying some like user experience from the ground up, and it's something that we're trying to do over at Infrared too, right? Just from like education and just like general UX. Good example is like I think it's going to be impossible to have like get mass adoption if you have like 10 steps before you can opt into like a stablecoin savings account. That there's like imagine a new user coming in and it was like you got to click buttons like 10-20 times before you finally get there. Like how do you shorten that and how do you make that better and optimize it?
Yeah, definitely.
What's one bear market lesson that stuck with you?
That's a good question. Touch grass, spend time with family, and take care of your health.
Definitely. And thank you for this, Raito. I was really looking forward to this discussion. We right now have a comprehensive understanding of what infrared is and why is it important in Berachain's proof of liquidity. And more than this, I think when we are gonna look back 1 year and we look at these documents, they're gonna be history. So we are making history, guys, here.
Amazing.
Let's go.
Let's go, Ooga Booga.
Thanks, Biju. Thanks, Cost. It's a pleasure being on the pod. Thanks for having me. This was actually, I didn't mention it in the beginning, but this is actually one of the first times that I've jumped on the pod. First time doing this, so a bit nervous.
Oh, really?
Yeah, give me some comments, feedback, suggestions, how I can improve, be better.
No,
yeah.
you did awesome. Like I
Yeah,
think
I
you
didn't
could go
expect
to
tell
yeah, you could go to a podcast or a space every day.
You really know your stuff, man, and when you know your stuff, it's hard not to do
it comes
good.
natural at that point.
Yeah. Appreciate it, guys. And by the way, great shirt. Thanks for repping.
Yeah, it was awesome. See ya.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.